Think of the last time you watched Pulp Fiction, and that diner scene with Pumpkin and Honey Bunny came back around at the end. Most people think it's just Tarantino being Tarantino, playing with timelines and creating cool dialogue. But what if I told you that this seemingly random scene is actually the entire point of the movie? That those few minutes with Pumpkin and Honey Bunny aren't about a robbery at all, but about something far more profound that changes everything you thought you knew about Jules Winnfield and the entire narrative structure of one of cinema's greatest films? The biggest mistake people make when analyzing Pulp Fiction is treating it like a puzzle to be solved chronologically. They spend all their time trying to figure out what's in the briefcase or debating, but they completely miss what's happening right in front of them. The diner scene isn't a bookend. It's not a clever narrative trick. It's the entire thesis statement of the film, and Tarantino shows you this in the very first minute. Watch the opening again. Pumpkin and Honey Bunny are sitting in a booth at this coffee shop, and they're discussing their criminal careers. Pumpkin says liquor stores are too dangerous because the owners have guns. Banks are too hard because of security. But diners? Diners are perfect because nobody ever robs restaurants. The customers are scared. The employees don't care enough to be heroes. And you can be in and out in 60 seconds. It's the perfect crime. Low risk, decent reward, no moral complexity. Just scared people handing over their wallets. Now here's what's brilliant. Tarantino makes you complicit in this robbery. You're watching these two young lovers. They're charming, they're funny, they're quoting Fonzie and talking about their relationship. Amanda Plummer and Tim Roth make them so charismatic that when they stand up and pull their guns, screaming about executing people, you're almost rooting for them. You want them to succeed because Tarantino has manipulated you into identifying with them. That's the expectation he sets. These are our protagonists. This is a heist movie. We're supposed to want the robbers to win. Then the film cuts away, and we don't return to that diner for over 2 hours of screen time. In between, we watch Vincent Vega and Jules Winnfield execute Brett and his friends in cold blood. We see Vincent accidentally shoot Marvin in the face. We watch Butch Coolidge kill Vincent and let Marcellus Wallace get raped. We witness every kind of violence and moral degradation imaginable. The film takes us through a journey of characters making terrible choices, facing consequences, and navigating a world where violence is currency and redemption seems impossible. But something happens to Jules during this journey. After the miracle in Brett's apartment, where all those bullets miss him and Vincent, Jules has what he calls a moment of clarity. He decides he's going to walk the earth like Caine in Kung Fu. Leave the life of crime behind and try to be a good person. Vincent thinks he's insane. Marcellus will never let him just walk away. But Jules is adamant. He's seen the face of God, and he's done being a killer. Now, most people understand this character arc on a surface level. Jules has a religious awakening and wants to change. That's clear enough. But here's what people miss. The diner scene isn't just where we see Jules again. It's where we see if his transformation is real. Because talking about being a better person while you're eating breakfast is easy. Actually being a better person when someone puts a gun in your face and threatens your life? That's when we find out who you really are. Let me break down exactly what happens in that diner, because every single choice Tarantino makes is intentional. When Pumpkin and Honey Bunny start the robbery, Jules and Vincent are sitting there with a briefcase full of Marcellus Wallace's property. They're armed. They're professional killers. The old Jules, the Jules from the beginning of the film who recites Ezekiel 25:17 before executing people, would have killed these two amateur robbers without a second thought. It would have been justified. It would have been self-defense. Nobody would have blamed him. But watch what Jules does instead. When Pumpkin gets to their table and demands the briefcase, Jules doesn't reach for his gun. He talks. He stays calm. He tells Pumpkin his name, which is a humanizing gesture, an attempt to create connection rather than confrontation. He's trying to de-escalate a situation that he could easily dominate through violence. This is revolutionary for his character. This is a man who, hours earlier in his timeline, was perfectly comfortable shooting someone for eating a hamburger without permission. Then comes the most important moment in the entire film. Jules tells Pumpkin about the passage from Ezekiel that he's been reciting before every kill. But this time, he doesn't recite it as a prelude to violence. He recites it as a meditation on his own transformation. He says he's been saying this passage for years, and he always thought it meant he was the righteous man, and the people he killed were the evil. But now he realizes he's been the evil man, and he's trying to become the righteous man. He's trying to be the shepherd protecting the weak. This is salvation. Not in a religious sense, necessarily, though that's part of it, but salvation in the sense that Jules is actively choosing, in the moment of greatest pressure, to be something other than what he's always been. He's choosing mercy over violence. He's choosing dialogue over domination. He's choosing to let these two amateur criminals live, even though they threatened him, even though he could kill them easily, even though the old Jules absolutely would have killed them. And here's the detail that proves this is intentional. Tarantino could have ended the scene with Jules just letting them go. That would have been enough to show his transformation. But he doesn't. Jules gives Pumpkin $1,500 from his own wallet. He gives him a way out. He provides for the robber who just threatened his life. This is grace. This is the shepherd protecting the weak in the valley of darkness. Jules isn't just talking about being a better person anymore. He's actually doing it, in the hardest possible moment, when every instinct and every bit of his training is telling him to respond with violence. Now let's talk about why Tarantino structures the film this way, because this is where it gets really interesting. By showing us the beginning of the robbery at the start of the film and the resolution at the end, Tarantino creates a frame that recontextualizes everything in between. When you first watch Pumpkin and Honey Bunny start their robbery, you think you're watching a crime film about criminals doing crime. You think the tension is going to be whether they succeed or fail at the robbery. But by the time we return to that diner, we've been on a journey. We've seen what violence actually looks like. We've seen the consequences of living by the gun. We've watched Vincent Vega die on a toilet because he couldn't let go of his violent lifestyle. We've seen Butch Coolidge almost lose everything because of pride and violence. And we've watched Jules Winnfield have a genuine spiritual awakening and struggle with what it means to change who you are at a fundamental level. So when we return to that diner, we're not watching a robbery anymore. We're watching a test. We're watching to see if redemption is actually possible in Tarantino's universe. Can someone who has been a killer their entire life actually become something else? Can grace exist in a world this violent and cynical? The answer Tarantino gives us is yes, but it's hard. It requires conscious choice in every moment. It requires giving up power when you have every right to use it. It requires being the shepherd when every instinct tells you to be the wolf. And here's where the narrative technique becomes genius. By bookending the film with this scene, Tarantino makes Jules's transformation the frame through which we understand everything else. Vincent's death isn't just a shocking moment. It's a consequence of refusing to change. Butch's escape isn't just an action sequence. It's a parallel journey of someone trying to break free from the violence that defines them. Even Mia Wallace's overdose and revival becomes a story about second chances and choosing life over death. The diner scene recontextualizes the entire film as a meditation on salvation, and whether it's possible for people to fundamentally change who they are. And Tarantino's answer, delivered through Jules's choice to spare Pumpkin and Honey Bunny, is that yes, it's possible, but it requires grace. Not just receiving grace, but extending it to others, even when they don't deserve it, even when it costs you something, even when the easier path would be violence. Now, before I show you the other hidden details in this scene that support this interpretation, Make sure that you hit the subscribe button for more deep dives in Tarantino film universe. Let's go on with the video. There are 3 other details in the diner scene that most people miss, but they're absolutely critical to understanding what Tarantino is doing. First, notice the difference in how Jules and Vincent react to the robbery. Vincent is annoyed. He's ready to kill these people. He thinks they're idiots for robbing a diner where 2 professional hitmen happen to be eating. Vincent hasn't changed at all. He's still the same violent, impulsive person he was at the beginning of the film. And significantly, Vincent is the one who dies. His refusal to transform, his inability to see that there might be meaning in the miracle they experienced, that's what kills him. Tarantino is showing us the 2 paths. Jules chooses transformation and lives. Vincent refuses transformation and dies. Second, pay attention to the briefcase. Throughout the entire film, this briefcase is treated as the most important object in the story. People die for it. It glows with mysterious light. Fans have spent decades debating what's inside it. But in the diner scene, Jules willingly risks it. He could lose Marcellus Wallace's property. He could face consequences for that. But he chooses the lives of Pumpkin and Honey Bunny over the briefcase. He chooses human beings over material objects, over money, over his obligation to his boss. This is a complete inversion of the value system that governed his life up until this moment. Third, and this is the most subtle detail, watch Honey Bunny during Jules's speech. She's terrified, she's crying, she's holding a gun, but she's completely out of her depth. And Jules sees this. He sees that she's not really a hardened criminal. She's just a scared person who made a bad choice. And instead of punishing her for that choice, he gives her and Pumpkin a way out. He gives them the same grace that he's hoping to receive for all the terrible things he's done. This is the shepherd protecting the weak. This is what salvation looks like in practice. The diner scene in Pulp Fiction isn't about a robbery. It's about whether redemption is possible. It's about whether someone can fundamentally change who they are. It's about grace, mercy, and the conscious choice to be something other than what you've always been. Tarantino structures the entire film around this moment, because it's the moment that answers the question the whole movie has been asking. Can a killer become a shepherd? Can someone who has been evil become righteous? And the answer, delivered in that diner with Pumpkin and Honey Bunny, is yes. But it requires sacrifice. It requires giving up power. It requires extending grace to people who don't deserve it, because that's what grace is. This is why Pulp Fiction endures. It's not just a cool crime movie with great dialogue and a non-linear structure. It's a profound meditation on transformation, redemption, and what it means to actually change. The diner scene is the key that unlocks everything else. Once you see it as Jules's test, as the moment where his transformation becomes real, the entire film reorganizes itself around that central question of salvation. And here's the final detail that will blow your mind. The film ends with Jules and Vincent walking out of the diner, alive, together, before the timeline splits and Vincent goes to his death. Tarantino gives us one last image of them as partners, as friends, before their choices diverge and determine their fates. It's a moment of grace for the audience, too. We get to see them both alive one more time, even though we know what's coming for Vincent. It's Tarantino extending the same mercy to us that Jules extends to Pumpkin and Honey Bunny. One last moment of peace before the violence returns. So the next time you watch Pulp Fiction, don't just watch it as a crime film. Watch it as a story about salvation. Watch Jules in that diner, choosing mercy over violence, grace over judgment, transformation over stagnation. Watch him become the shepherd, because that's what the whole film has been building toward. That's the moment that makes everything else make sense. The diner scene isn't about robbery. It's about a man choosing to save himself by saving others. And that's beautiful. If you want to go even deeper into film analysis and learn how to spot these hidden meanings in other Tarantino scenes, hit the subscribe button and I'll see you in the next one.